My best friend's dad is single and he is a sweetheart. I can't imagine what it's like to only hear about single mom struggles, which are definitely difficult. I just feel like both sides need to be heard. Wow, I'm so happy you guys decided to share your stories. I'm just an 18-year-old girl trying to make a small difference. So you guys sharing your stories helps. Story 1. I am the daughter of a single father. When my sister and I were kids, just after my mom died, the visits from friends stopped. It's like the other parents couldn't handle that my dad was the only parent around. Story 2. I am no longer a single father, but having their friends come over stopped or was next to impossible to arrange. I get it, though. It just sucks for the kids. Story 3. I spent a short time as a single dad while my wife was in the hospital, and nobody knew if she would come back home. In my eyes, the biggest struggle was that people automatically assumed I was babysitting my kid or that they would outright question if I was actually the dad because mom was nowhere in sight. If people just kept out of my business, I would be eternally grateful. At least my kid loves me. Story 4. I have had custody of my daughters for about 9 years. They are 13 and 16 now. As someone else said, they have never really had friends stay over. It seems like their parents did not trust me as much as the courts did. When I take them to the beauty supply store or the salon, the cashiers always seem to ask them if their mom has a rewards card there. Usually, my oldest will tell them in her sternest voice, "My mother stopped coming to visit us years ago, and my dad takes care of us. Ask him if he has one." Not so much now that they are older, but they used to get the question, "Are you guys having fun with your dad on his weekend?" This used to upset them. I never understood why someone would ask them that in that manner. How do they know their mother did not die or something, and not that she is just a loser deadbeat? Story 5. Speaking for my father, a single dad taking care of 2 girls, these things stood out. 1. When I was still a baby, I couldn't go to the public bathroom by myself. Usually, mothers will take their kids, including their little boys, into the women's restroom. But my dad didn't want to take his little girls into the men's restroom, especially the kind that had urinals in it. So he would go into the women's restroom with me and my sister. Unfortunately, the women were very uncomfortable with it. When I was in Girl Scouts, the mothers were, again, very uncomfortable when my dad would show up to the meetings. He was the only father there. They knew my mother had passed away and I had no one else, but they couldn't feel any compassion, and it eventually led to me quitting the Scouts. Story 6. Not being invited anywhere. Not really being welcomed anywhere. We are viewed with suspicion, I feel, but I'm uncertain about what. Story 7. I know a single father of 3 who the courts were so biased against because he is a big, huge, intimidating-looking guy that essentially, without any evidence, his wife was able to convince a court he was abusive and dangerous. He fought for years for his kids, and it was only after he literally rescued them from the mom attempting to murder them that he was finally awarded sole custody. I'm being literal here. He broke a restraining order to smash his way into the house because he knew his wife was on drugs and had been talking crazy. And when he got in there, she was actively trying to kill his daughter. Even then, this was initially perceived as a kidnapping and not a rescue, solely because it was just really believable to people that this well-dressed, clean-cut woman cared more for their children than this gruff, 6'7" tattooed mechanic possibly could. He literally saved his daughter from being stabbed and got stabbed himself in the process before disarming the girl and carrying all 3 kids at once out the door. It was always awful that he didn't get custody in the first place, but even after that incident, he still had to convince the courtroom. It was ultimately that he had records of his injuries and the kids being treated, and he called the police immediately that got him custody. The mother ended up in jail finally. Story 8. People many times think you're a piece of shit for not sticking with the mother. Even the jokes about, "Wow, what did you do?" aren't funny after the 100th time. Also, getting the short end of the stick in terms of time allotment or having to pay child support when you've got split custody. Story 9. My struggle is with the family court system in California. I feel like I am being treated like a criminal in regard to custody of my boys. I am only allowed visitations twice a week for 2 hours and one Saturday for 3 hours. That's 7 hours a week, less than 4% of the time. Story 10. My dad is a retired police officer in a small town. When I was a baby, A cocaine dealer was arrested in our driveway while my dad was on duty. They both had to go through drug tests. He was clean, but she was not. She won custody initially because he had to work at night. Fast forward through a couple of years of child support and visitations, my dad got another custody hearing with a lot of evidence against her, and she didn't even show up because she knew she would lose. My dad checked me out of kindergarten and said, "I won, you don't have to go back." And we spent the next 25 years together. I'm 30 now, and my mother has reached out several times throughout my life, but I'm not interested. There's no telling how much my dad paid to win custody of me, but I know he told me to never borrow against your retirement unless it's absolutely necessary. Story 11. We are not treated as equal parents to the mother. When I have my daughter, I'm not babysitting. I'm spending time with my daughter and creating memories, like parents are supposed to do. To be looked at as a part-time parent, even though my life revolves around my daughter, is beyond frustrating. It's also irritating when people make comments about visiting dad's house. Home is with me, just as much as home is with her mom. She doesn't sleep in a guest bedroom. She sleeps in her room, in our home, where all her toys, books, and clothes are. We are looked at as part-time parents no matter how involved we are. Story 12. I worked 2 jobs just to survive, 60 to 70 hours a week. I was refused every government aid because I was a man. They laughed at me when I asked for it. I never completed high school nor went to college because I had a child to raise. My son got no special treatment by society because he was raised by a single man. I was blamed for everything. People looked at me as an unfit father because I was hard on my son about his schooling. I was ridiculed for teaching mannerism and respect to my son, which made him look nerdy. I learned to say no to my son, that it's better to live humbly than to have new things. 15 years later, my son joined the military, got married, and had a child while going to college at the same time. He obtained a job that pays more than I ever made in 2 years. He bought his first home before he reached 25, with no help from me. He is currently completing his doctorate in college while working, still making more money than me. So to all the people who said I couldn't raise a kid by myself, that I didn't know what I was doing, that I was too mean to him, you're right. I didn't raise a man. I raised a doctor, and I am very proud of him. Story 13. The isolation. The mothers of my kids' classmates treat me like I'm trying to get into all of their pants. Single mothers treat you like you obviously did something severely wrong to end up in your situation. Instead of the kid's mother being a bad person, you obviously did something so bad that she had to leave. Where I am, the rules for courts are pretty gender neutral. But there are people who have certain ideologies that make it a lot more difficult. He and I were almost homeless until a judge gave me full custody and rights. It took 7 months of her not taking him and not showing up to court for this to happen. And if you tried venting or complaining, well, you're lucky you even get to see your kid. That was usually from fathers who gave up custody. The general treatment. On paper, everyone loves the single father. But the reality is that a lot of people want nothing to do with it because of the perceptions. At least my experience. Story 14. When my wife left me for another man, the kids stayed with me for a while, and then they left because she needed them more. I bumped around a big empty house for weeks, wondering why I was still alive. I wasn't sure I should have been. I wasn't suicidal, but I didn't want to live. She moved to the East Coast, and I went from being a full-time father to seeing my kids 2 weeks a year when I could afford to come out. I never really recovered. I still don't feel a reason to live. I just kind of don't die. Story 15. The assumption that you are simply lesser than a woman because of your gender. I was sitting at a pub on one of my few rare nights out and was simply talking with friends. When the women around me learned that I was a single father of a daughter, their attitude changed. All of a sudden, they were lamenting all those girly things my daughter would never get to do because her mom wasn't around. How she wouldn't have the fun hairstyles because, clearly, my bald self was incapable. Well, I showed them then and there what sort of father I was. Half drunk, sitting in the beer garden and working under the light from the street lamps. I gave that mouthy woman the best French braid she had ever had. Just because I'm a man who has never needed those skills doesn't mean I won't work hard to learn them to make sure I could teach them to my daughter too. I watched YouTube videos, I read up on medical conditions that affect girls only, and I listened to my daughter about what she wanted. Then I went out and learned how to do it. Women aren't superior parents because of their gender and, in a lot of cases, they are anything but equal to the father and are bad parents. Story 16. Balancing career, housework, raising a child, and free time along with the typical isolation that happens to single men in general. Single fatherhood is not for the faint of heart. The typical assumption is that things must have been really bad with your ex and her stability as a person for you to have gotten custody of your child. So there's a layer of distrust for what type of man you are or what kind of choices you must make in life. Story 17. One of my uncles, from what I know, became a single dad at 24 after his girlfriend died in a car accident. He luckily had a lot of support from his former girlfriend's family and my grandparents and dad, as well as his huge number of friends, so he had a much easier transition to being a single dad, but it was difficult. The only thing I know that affected him is he is a bit traumatized, but unlike the egregious stories on this thread, he is in a better spot. My cousin is pretty smart and really bookish like him and is going to a really good university, so everyone sees him as a great dad, but the trauma haunts him and he feels very guilty for having my grandma and his former girlfriend's mom be my cousin's mother figures. And the question about his former girlfriend probably hurt him the most since his son never got to remember her. Society was not as kind to him, as they had their automatic babysitter responses, but after learning what he went through, they usually apologize or scurry away embarrassed. He is about 48 now and did not have any other children, but he got married last year, so it is looking much brighter for him. Story 18. I'm not sure if this fits here, but I have my son 80% of the time. My ex is legitimately out dating other people all the time. I know this because she never changed any passwords and her iMessages are signed into our shared computer, which she gracefully left for me. All her family thinks I'm an asshole because I don't have any respect for her. The worst part of the story is after a year, I decided to go on a date after meeting a nice woman. A few dates later, she came over for a night. My neighbor, who is a single mother, told my ex I had a woman over. Now everybody thinks I'm irresponsible because I must have had sex with this woman one time. When I mention my ex's behavior, everybody jumps to her defense because she is a single mother and is allowed to date other men. I still don't get it. Nobody even gives me credit for running my own business and caring for my child the majority of the time. It's pretty aggravating. Story 19, for one, have a child and dad night, or in my case, a daddy and Ian night. My dad would try to have one once a week. Essentially what it was, after my dad got home from work or doing his adult duties, he would either take me out to dinner, with us rotating where we wanted to go. Granted, it wasn't much of a rotation as we both only chose 3 places. Texas Roadhouse, Red Robin, or Fridays, or go to see a movie or something like that. If he couldn't take us out to anything, he would rent a movie of my choice on Redbox or Xfinity on demand, and we would just watch that for the night. Sometimes we would play board games together or put a big puzzle together. He once got a puzzle made out of a picture of us. Still have the puzzle somewhere but can't remember. He worked really late on weekdays and I'd usually be asleep by the time he got home, so these nights were extremely valuable for me, especially since I knew he was tired and probably wanted to go to sleep. Story 20. Not a single dad, but I am very involved with my kids. I find it annoying, especially in Asian cultures, that a dad who knows how to take care of kids or, God forbid, tie a ponytail and change diapers is scoffed at. They call guys that do women's work a super wet nurse father. So I can imagine it being rough for single dads. You guys rock. Story 21. I lost my mom very suddenly last year, and I'm 21 and the eldest of 5 siblings. We're lucky to have many supportive friends and family members, but one thing that many people, even complete strangers, feel the need to tell him is that he has to start looking for a second wife. Now, let him grieve and stay out of my family's business. People expect him to be completely practical and think of the kids, and thus marry again immediately, which is incredibly wrong because he's such a kind, caring, strong, and unselfish dad. Let the poor man grieve and let the kids grieve. It hasn't even been a year. You don't know anything. Story 22. If family services come into the picture for whatever reason and you have a daughter and more than one boy, they will hold the lack of a female presence in her home life against you. Happened to my dad with my sister. Story 23. Single fathers have a very hard time, especially if it was through a divorce. Many of them are miserable, depressed, and highly suicidal due to the fact that legal courts are often biased in favor of the mother, even if she was unfit, and this issue is worldwide. Single mothers often face financial struggles, while single fathers face challenges in every aspect. Story 24. California. Single mothers have more resources than single fathers. Here are a few examples. The county has a program that pays single teen moms to go to school. Upon graduation, they may receive money to buy a car or for car seats, while teen dads only receive counseling, my program at the time, on how to be involved with their children. A local community college can provide additional financial assistance to low-income single mothers attending classes for buying a car or for repairs. Public assistance. Single mothers with children do not need to provide proof they have custody, unless the father contests, to apply for cash assistance, whereas single fathers do have to provide proof of custody of their children. Shelters have exclusive rooms for single mothers with children, family rooms, but single fathers do not. Some religious family shelters will not allow boys over 8 years of age into shelters. Over the course of 10 years, I have started to see some changes. More single fathers are being welcomed into social services programs. However, there is still a stigma and myths. Fathers can't be nurturing or emotionally involved in their children's lives. But more single fathers gaining custody is changing that view and perception. I have been in the social services field for more than 20 years.